Sorry I'm late. A new season of Fortnite came out, so me and my friends, we were playing and can't just pause Fortnite. So I had to finish the match. It went longer than I thought it would, which is fine. But anyway, so I'm here. Gonna read, let's see, hold on one second. Let me open this up and then see where we are. We did part 1 already, and we're reading from Anatomy of a False Confession, Interrogation and Convict Brendan Dassey, by Michael Chinchini. We read part 1 already. Now we're hitting part 2, and there are 11, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 chapters, excuse me, in part 2. So chapter 4 through 11. We're starting on page 19. So I think I'm going to read 4, 5, and 6, and then we'll, or maybe I'll try just to read 4, 5, 6, and 7, and then that way we can do 8 next month. 8, 9, 10, 11 next, because that's an even number. So let's see how far we get. Page 19. These chapters aren't super long, so I'm not worried about that. It's just, yeah. So yeah, I think I'll do that. But it's only from page 19 to 44. That's not a lot, to be honest with you. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and just start reading. I see Carol's here. Hi, Carol. I probably, hold on. Let me also make sure, because I was late coming on, Facebook people probably, it's probably not going live on Facebook. Yeah, see, it didn't live on Facebook, but that's okay. So we will just share the link to Facebook, just in case anybody else wants to pop on real quick. And yeah. I'm really excited about Fortnite this season because it's some sort of like slime thing where you turn like a silver, like metal looking slime thing, and you can like, it's really cool when that happens. And then 2, so I have a subscription to Fortnite because I play a lot of Fortnite. And when you level up, you can gain points, and then you exchange points for prizes, basically. And the very last prize you can earn, because there's certain points equal certain prizes, and it opens up. It's kind of a little hard to explain, I guess. But anyway, one of the prizes is Spider Gwen, and you have to wait until page 10. Means you have to get to at least level 100, I think, before you can get Spider Gwen. And I'm just so like, I love Spider Gwen. Spider Gwen's like my favorite female superhero, next to a few others. Anyway, let me just post this in the group, and then we will go ahead and start the reading. And I'm just gonna read and then glance up every once in a while. So if you have a question while I'm reading, just I will get to it. It just might take me a little bit. So changing of the weather. Hey, Jazz Naz. Jazz Naz, have you been playing the new season of Fortnite? What do you think? Join us for part 2 of reading Church. All right. I posted that in the link. Roxana, it's raining here. Oh, you played Fortnite? Oh, that was late. No, I mean, I was late because I was playing Fortnite. Yes, I was late. So you're on time. I haven't started reading yet. So welcome Roxana, welcome Jasnaz, welcome Carol. I just posted in the group, so hopefully more people will join us. But okay, so hey Baz. No worries. This is a perfect live just to listen to. All right, so chapter 4. This is part 2, chapter 4, page 21 for reference in case you guys want to. If you have the book and you want to follow along. Jaznaz, that's funny because Tina was saying the same thing. I actually don't the chrome shotgun, but I don't like the new SMS. I don't like it, and I don't like the rifle, but I don't mind the shotgun. But Tina was telling me while we were playing that she didn't like them. She likes the rifle, so I'm like, it's okay. Hey Dozer, hey Jakes. All right, so now I'll go ahead and start reading. Chapter 4. Gee, that's it. Yeah, I don't like the new MG. All right, hold on. I have to get the yawning out of me. Did you know yawning is actually because you're not getting enough oxygen? So to combat it, you take deep breaths. I learned that in band. Don't use it a lot. Hey, Carrie. All right. Don't let facts get in the way. In some cases, suspects have falsely confessed to crimes without any police promoting whatsoever. For example, John Carr falsely confessed to a murder, the child pageant queen John Bennett Ramsey. Much like Brendan's story, or Dassey's story about Hallback, scientific testing disproved Carr's version of events. The 41-year-old school teacher's DNA didn't match on the little girl's underwear. But unlike Dassey's case, investigators examined the facts through an objective lens. Then, after comparing Carr's story to the actual evidence, Colorado authorities said they weren't going to charge Carr with the murder. Sorry. Ugh. Been all night. Sorry, my eyes are also been watery because of the season change. I think it's the season change, and then A lot more people, because it's getting cooler at night, so I think a lot more people are starting to do their fireplace. So that makes my eyes water more. I'm gonna have to get my eye drops, find them somewhere. It's beginning to be that time of the year. All right. There are many possible explanations for this bizarre type of false confessions. These include the confessor's pathological need for attention and the blurring of fantasy and reality, which may cause the confessor to really believe that he committed the crime. But spontaneous and unprompted false confessions, like cars, account for a small number of cases. In the vast majority of false confession cases, the interrogator has formed a theory of the case and refuses to deviate from it. With this theory being immune to correction, the interrogator forces it upon the suspect to obtain a statement that confirms the interrogator's predetermined beliefs. The interrogator's overconfidence, therefore, is one of the primary causes of the suspect's false confession, and this is a backdrop against which Mark Uyghur and Todd Fassbander's multiple interrogations of Dassey must be viewed. Yeah, it does for me, Jaznaz. That's one of the main reasons I have a hard time sleeping. Long before Uyghur and Fassbenders deployed of their tactics on Dassey, however, there are two other law enforcement agents that hold of the learning disabled teen. Shortly after Halbach's disappearance, but before her remains were found, investigating officers developed a theory of the case. Stephen Avery had taken Halbach and was keeping her, or her corpse, on his property. And on November 6, 2005, Detectives O'Neill and Baldwin of the Marinette County Sheriff's Department interrogated Dassey. Their goal was to obtain a statement that corroborated. I can never say that word right. Am I saying it right? Corroborated. Yeah, I guess so. It just never sounds right to me. Anyway, the state's theory. They wanted Dassey to confirm that Halbach was last seen on Avery's property with Avery. O'Neill and Baldwin placed Dassey in the back of their unmarked squad car and aggressively interrogated him without Miranda warnings. I think that on this channel, and I know Foul Play probably has it on their channel and also on the website. So if you guys want to check that out, it's interesting. And the transcript is also on the Foul Play website, I believe. So it's the one where everyone affectionately calls it the ticking one, because you can hear the lights in the background. So Dassey told them about a week earlier on Halloween, he got off his school bus, saw Halbach talking with Avery, and then walked up the road towards his home. O'Neill and Baldwin's interrogation went as followed. I'm not gonna say detective, I'm just gonna say O'Neill, but it says Detective O'Neill. O'Neill, what happened to Halbach? Dassey, she left. O'Neill, she didn't leave. What happened to that girl? Dassey, well, she stayed there 5 minutes and then she left. O'Neill, now that's what you're being told to say. What happened to that girl? Dassey, I don't know nothing. That's all I know. O'Neill, now is that what you saw, or is that what you're being told to say? See, that's what I saw. She went out of the driveway and then left. Thank you, Jaznaz. Having Halbach driving away from Avery's property did not fit with the interrogator's version of events, so they got a bit more aggressive when forcing their theory of the case onto Dassey. Baldwin, did she go into Avery's house, Brendan? Dassey, no. Baldwin, did she go into your house, Brendan? Dassey, huh? Baldwin, did she go into your house? Dassey, no. Baldwin, where is Dassey? I don't know. By the way, I'm trying to say it as they have written, so like, there's like italics what is it called? In italic words, so that's why I'm trying to be emphasis on it. So that's yeah, just putting that out there. And this is also how, like I said, Jasmine has posted the interview. So if you guys want to check it out, um, they were pretty rough on him. They were pretty rough. So yeah. Baldwin. Brendan, you're not telling me something. Dassey. She never came in my house. Baldwin. Okay, where is she? Dassey. I don't know anything. Baldwin. Then why are you lying to me about this? Dassey. I ain't. Baldwin. What do you mean you ain't? Why is her vehicle on your land? Those fingerprints, did you think we're going to find in the van or in the truck of hers? Your fingerprints going to be in there? O'Neill. Hallback's truck did not leave that place. It did not go out of the driveway and take a left. Baldwin. Brendan, what happened? Dassey. I'm saying that's what happened. O'Neill. How soon after you got off the bus did Hallback's vehicle leave? Dassey. 5 minutes. It takes us like 5 minutes to walk down the road. Which is true. Thank you, Jasnaz. O'Neill. So when you're walking down the road, is she leaving? Dassey. Yeah, because we had to move on the side of the road so she can pass. Dassey's statement was disastrous for the state. The state's theory was that Holbach never left Avery's property, but Dassey told O'Neill and Baldwin that not only did he witness Holbach leaving, but he had to step off the road so that she could drive past him. This version of events strongly supported Avery's defense that he did not murder Holbach. And in fact, the last time he saw her, she was driving away from him. Also, I want to make a note here. If you guys go back to the live that I did like a couple of months ago when we did our rally, the sign, eventually I do walk down to the trailer and you can see the kind of road it is. And there were people who were driving past us in cars, and yes, you had to step aside, and because it was literally a one side road or whatever they call it, 1 lane road. So, and we did time ourselves while walking. It was around 7 minutes. So Brendan is telling the truth here. There's no way. I mean, it took 7 minutes, and then he had to have stepped off the side of the road to let her drive by, him and Blaine. This would mean that someone else must have killed her at a different location, put her body in her RAV, and then drove back to the Avery's property. This would also explain why Hallback's blood was found in the back of her own vehicle. Fortunately for the state, Uyghur and Fassbender actually took over, and they had the superhuman ability to know what really happened. This is a special power that police interrogators believe they acquire through their training and experience. More on that later. So when Uyghur and Fassbender eventually interrogate Dassey, they are not searching for the truth. Rather, they wanted to extract statements that corroborate the truth as they know it. More specifically, police interrogations begin with the presumption of guilt. Interrogators set out to confirm that presumption using a variety of tactics in the process. The problem, however, is that while these tactics often extract truth confessions from guilty suspects, they sometimes use false confessions from innocent suspects. Uyghur and Fassbender believe that Dassey did at some point see Hallbach on the Avery's property. However, they are equally confident that Dassey did not see her drive away in her SUV. Rather, she remained on the property where Avery killed her and then burned her body right next to his trailer. And because they believe Dassey was lying, they interpret every neutral and ambiguous fact in a way that confirmed rather than contradicts their side of the case. For example, Uyghur testified that turning point came when he interviewed Dassey's younger relative, Kayla Avery. It was this interview that steered the investigation towards Dassey. Our purpose for going there was to interview Kayla in reference to Stephen Avery, and just about the end of the interview, Kayla, out of the blue, basically came out and told us that she had a cousin by the name of Brendan, and that Brendan was, quote, acting up lately. We asked Kayla what she meant by Brendan acting up lately. At that point, Kayla told us that Brendan would just stare into space and start crying, basically uncontrollably. She also told us that Brendan had lost approximately what she estimated to be about 40 pounds. There are reasons to be skeptical of Wiegert's testimony. For example, given that the interrogators were talking to Kayla about Avery and his alleged crime, why would she offer up irrelevant information out of the blue about Dassey's weight? And would a girl her age even be aware enough to notice someone else's mood change or weight loss in the first place? If so, would she describe crying and losing weight as, quote, acting up? Those things sound more like signs that he had withdrawn, which is opposite of acting up. And what does Wiegert mean when he said Kayla said that Dassey would cry basically uncontrollably? Wiegert was obviously paraphrasing. What were Kayla's actual words? And did Wiegert ask an adult to confirm any of this information that Kayla spontaneously offered up out of the blue? We've had questions about that at the beginning, haven't we, folks? Of course, Wiegert and Fassbender did not want to confirm anything. They had the hook they needed. They already knew that Dassey was a liar. After all, Dassey's eyewitness account of Hallbach driving away from the Avery property did not match their beliefs. And now a young girl's unsubstantial report about Dassey crying and weight was not only deemed reliable, but in their minds could only be explained this way. Dassey was experiencing guilt from witnessing and perhaps even participating in Hallbach's murder. It really is that simple. When a government agent is convinced that he knows something, he then interprets every piece of information in a way that substantiates his beliefs. Wiegert explained it to the jury like this. So you take some of those things that Dassey told the Marinette officers, O'Neill and Baldwin, that just didn't seem to fit. Wiegert continued. And then the losing weight and the uncontrollable crying. Obviously, that points you in a direction you want to go. Wiegert then testified after they set their sights on Dassey, myself and Agent Fassbender, had went to the Mishicot school system, and that's where we met with Mr. Dassey that day. That's so frustrating to me too, Jaznaz. I would do anything to get a copy of a record or anything of that interview with Kayla. Not anything, but about almost anything to get that. Wiegert had fooled himself into thinking that he was Sherlock Holmes, picking up a subtle clue that only he could detect and then following it to discover the truth. But in reality, he was merely interpreting information to fit his pre-existing beliefs. And if there's any doubt that Wiegert and Fassbender's confident in their ability to divine the truth without the benefit of actual evidence, we wouldn't look further than their own words. At the Mishicot High School interrogation, Fassbender told Dassey, "By your look, I can tell you know something, and you saw something or somebody, and something's laying heavy on you. We wouldn't be here bothering you if we didn't know that." And Wiegert was even clearer. "Tom, Fassbender, and I have been doing this job a long, long time, longer than you've been alive, and our experience and our knowledge in this job tells us that you're not being totally honest with us." Wiegert and Fassbender's confidence in their lie detecting abilities is common among police interrogators. However, it is not justified. The Reed School in Chicago claims to have developed a behavioral analysis protocol that allows trained investigators to detect deception at high levels of accuracy. Researchers, however, have demonstrated that interrogators who use the Reed protocol are no more accurate than untrained individuals in detecting deception. Other researchers have shown that professionals who have been trained to detect deception in an interrogation context perform no better than chance at identifying deceptive persons. In short, it is unrealistic to think that police officers are or can become human lie detectors. But despite their unwarranted self-confidence, even Uyghur and Fassbender would have admitted that their ability to know Dassey was lying was only half the battle, because their special brand of knowledge was not rooted in evidence. The suspect has to admit that the interrogators believe. Without the suspect's confession, the interrogators' beliefs are very use in court. But getting the suspect to see the light isn't always easy. That's why the interrogation has to be fully planned, starting with its location. And as the next chapter explains, location is everything. Hey, under your scars. All right, chapter 5, page 27. Location, location, location. Any questions so far? All right, I'm going to go ahead. All of Dassey's police interrogators, O'Neill, Baldwin, Wiegert, and Fassbender, insisted that they were only after the truth. When questioning Dassey, they wanted to know all kinds of details, including very mundane details about things that happened weeks and even months earlier. For example, O'Neill and Baldwin peppered Dassey with questions about the exact time he arrived home on October 31st, 2005, whether he noticed Hallback standing near Avery when he got off his school bus, whether he was standing when he claims Hallback drove past away from the property, and what he had for dinner later that night, and what others in the Avery family may have seen or heard that day. Similarity, similarity Wiegert and Fassbender interrogated Dassey several times over a 48-hour period, demanding details about what time Dassey had saw his family members talking on the phone on October 31st, what time he left his house to go to Avery's trailer, where Hallbuck was parked when he last saw it, and again, what others may have seen or heard that day. Dassey compiled with law enforcement's every request. And according to Wiegert and Fassbender, Dassey's mother also cooperated and gave them full access to her son. Wiegert even told Dassey before one of the investigations, "I think we told you, Brendan, we talked to Mom, and Mom is okay with this and good with this, and she wants to talk to ya when we're done." He later added, "Your mom said be honest with us." So the question then is this: if you're an investigator collecting facts in your supposed search for the truth, where are you going to interview a shy Samuel Lariat? I don't know what word means. I'm gonna have to look that up. 16-year-old child with a bad memory. Hold on. Semi-illiterate. Oh, kind of like how I am. Okay, that's what that word is. Sorry. Semi-illiterate. 16-year-old child with a bad memory. Because both Dassey and his mother are being held are highly cooperative, you, the investigator, have your choice of the time and place for the interview. Of course, you wouldn't want to interview Dassey at his home with his mother present. The goal would be to make him as comfortable as possible so he can think clearly without a minuta you're interested in learning. And you'd also want to interview him at the place where the events unfolded. That way he could show you, for example, where Hallbach's vehicle was parked when he saw it and where he was standing when she drove past him. You would also want Dassey's mother close by, not only to make him more comfortable, but also to provide information that Dassey may not be able to recall. For example, what she made for dinner on a particular night. And interviewing Dassey at his home would provide additional benefits, such as being near things that may refresh his memory and even provide more reliable answers than he could. For example, with regard to what time did Dassey saw his family members talking on the phone on Halloween. Would that be better evidence than a phone bill to pin down the precise time of the calls? And where is the phone bill most likely to be located? That's right, at the Dassey's home. And who is most likely to know where to find it? That's right again, Dassey's mother. They made up the facts and just happened to find it. Yeah. But none of Dassey's interrogators really wanted to talk to him for the purpose of learning anything. At the last chapter explained, interrogators are guilt presumptive process. But the time O'Neill, Baldwin, and Wiegert and Fassbender got a hold of Dassey, they already believed they knew what happened and that they were only interested in getting Dassey to say the things that confirmed their pre-existing theory. And it appears that, contrary to Ken Kratt's claim, Dassey was a suspect from the very first interrogation by O'Neill and Baldwin a week after Hallbuck went missing. As the last chapter demonstrated, the interrogators repeatedly accused Dassey of lying, pressuring him to change his story, and even grilled him as to whether the then missing and possibly dead Hallbuck might be found inside his house, and to remove any remaining doubt that how they viewed Dassey, Baldwin pressed. Is that girl alive, Brendan? Yeah, you do know, Brendan. Were you involved in this? Similarity in Wiegert and Fassbender's first interview of Dassey, an interrogation without Miranda warnings conducted under the pretense that Dassey was merely a witness and was free to leave. Wiegert grilled the child. Did you have anything to do with the death of Teresa Hallbuck? The question is not commonly asked of a witness. Rather, it is a question for a suspect. But because Dassey's interrogators were not interested in learning information, they did not question him at his home or in the presence of his mother. Giving the real objectives, they did not want Dassey to be comfortable. Rather, they wanted to isolate him and make him as uncomfortable as possible. Police investigators typically isolate suspects from family and friends before the interrogation begins. Social isolation within unfamiliar surroundings leads to anxiety and desire to remove oneself from an uncomfortable situation. In this kind of situation, individuals often comply to a surprisingly high degree with their interrogators' demands. Isolating suspects and putting them in unfamiliar surroundings is by far the most commonly used police interrogation tactic, as is expected and worked brilliantly on Dassey. To say that Dassey felt anxiety due to his isolation while being interrogated is probably an understatement. For example, on November 6, 2005, O'Neill and Baldwin stopped the car in which Dassey was a passenger. They sieged and impounded the car, leaving Dassey dependent on them for a ride home. They then put Dassey in the back of their squad car to interrogate him. They knew Dassey was scared, and this is exactly what they wanted. They When they repeatedly pressured him to adapt their version of events, that Dassey did not see Hallbuck drive away from what they believed to be the scene of her murder, O'Neill even said, "Let's get beyond being scared. Let's get beyond the idea of you getting in trouble and going to jail. Did you actually see her leave, or did she stay there?" Similarity, Wiegert and Fassbender isolated Dassey by taking him out of class, interrogating him in a room at Mishicot High School, again in a room at the Two Rivers Police Department, and then again in a room at the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department. The setting for this last interrogation, which was very much like the setting for his earlier interrogation, was as follows. On March 1st, officers initially contacted Brendan by pulling him out of his high school class and driving him to the Manitowoc Police Department, where he was marooned alone. He was questioned behind a closed door in a small room, with his questioners being seated such that they blocked Brendan's path to exit. If Brendan had tried to leave, he would have been stopped. Brendan was not told that he was free to leave on March 1st. Instead, he was subjected to police-dominated interrogation that included deception, long police monologues, leading questions, suggestions of leniency, and rejections of his claims of innocence. All of Dassey's interrogators easily got the mentally challenged child where they wanted him, isolated from family, removed from familiar surroundings, and put into highly uncomfortable situations where authority figures scared the living daylights out of him. They also made it clear that in order to relieve the pressure they placed on him, he had to adapt their version of events. But before the interrogators could get to the meat of the matter, the interrogation They had one more hurdle, Dassey's Miranda rights. As the following chapter explains, just as the interrogators carefully planned the location of the questioning, so too did they plan ways to prevent Dassey from invoking his right to remain silent and his right to an attorney. Any questions, comments so far, guys? That's the end of chapter 5. All right. No, that's silent. Okay. So, okay. Chapter 6, page 31. It's called Miranda to the Rescue? Question mark. I'm Ron Burgundy. All right. Once investigators isolate a suspect on the government's home field, they have several tactics designed to ramp up the pressure. For example, consider the interrogation at Mishicot High School. After Wiegert and Fassbender. Oh, thank you guys. Once the investigators, wait, I read that. Consider interrogation at Mishicot High School. After Wiegert and Fassbender got Dassey alone, they falsely assured him that we're not here to jump in your face or get in ya or anything like that. But as soon as those words spilled out of their mouths, they made a 180-degree turn. We've got people back at the district attorney's office, and they're looking at this now saying there's no way that Brendan Dassey was out there and didn't see something. They're talking about trying to link Brendan Dassey with this event. They're saying that Brendan had something to do with it or the cover up, which would mean Brendan Dassey would potentially be facing charges for that. After the scare tactic, they offered a reprieve. We said no, let us talk to him, give him the opportunity to come forward with the information that he has and get it off his chest. They then pressed Dassey for details. You built a fire, and we believe that's where Teresa was cooked. Ugh. I forget that they were so crude with it. They continued, I'm afraid you saw something. Did you see a hand, a foot, something in that fire, or bones? Did you smell something that was not too right? This must have been an overwhelming shock to Dassey's system. 1 minute, this unsuspecting child sitting in the classroom learning mundane facts about history or science or pre-postodal phrases or whatever. The next minute, 2 government agents are grilling him about cooked human body parts and telling him that unless he comes forward with the scoop, the prosecutor will charge him for the crimes. How Dassey refrained from vomiting and passing on the spot remains a mystery. I asked my mom, this is a weird little side note. I asked my mom about that because my mom knows some really weird facts. And I asked her, like, how bad does a human body smell in a fire? Because I was, with the whole Kayla thing, Kayla said Brendan said he saw toes. Well, if you saw toes, you would have seen a whole leg because there's no way you can just see toes. You know what I mean? It's a pretty grisly sight. So anyway, so I asked her, like, just how bad does a human body smell? And she laid on this really interesting fact that I didn't know is that when during cremation process, when a human body burns, the first thing that you can smell is burnt urine and hair, and it's a pretty nasty smell. So you would know if there's a burned body in a bonfire. Anyway, just give you guys some gross facts for the day. Back to reading. But the law, at least in theory, is supposed to protect people in Dassey's predicament. The overwhelming pressure that Wiegert and Fassbender were putting on him is exactly the type of situation for which the now famous, constitutionally required Miranda warning was intended. That is, the goal of the Miranda warning was to ensure that suspects are fully informed of several important facts, including the right to remain silent and the right to an attorney, before succumbing to police pressure and agreeing to speak. Thanks largely to the police-themed television dramas, most readers would be able to recite at least some parts of the Miranda warning. Oddly, however, there's no scientific language required to satisfy the mandates set forth by the Supreme Court in the Miranda versus Arizona. In fact, hundreds of different versions of the warning are used throughout the United States. Even within a particular state, such as Wisconsin, the warning will vary among law enforcement agencies. Nonetheless, a typical Miranda warning, to the extent such a creature exists, goes something like this: you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. You have the right to consult with a lawyer before questioning and have a lawyer present with you during questioning. If you cannot afford to hire a lawyer, one will be appointed to represent you in public expense before or during any questioning, if you so wish. And if you decide to answer questions now without a lawyer present, you have the right to stop the questioning and remain silent at any time you wish, and the right to ask for and have a lawyer at any time you wish, including during the questioning. In theory, this language appears to protect suspects from pressure cooker situations like the one Dassey found himself in with Wiegert and Fassbender. However, a very curious thing about Miranda is the way the warning is delivered. The police are the ones who must convey the warning to the suspect. But despite what Deputy Friendly taught us in grade school, there are many times when the police are not our friends. And one of those times when they sit down to question us in a criminal investigation. Despite the investigators' false assurances that they're there to help the suspect and give him the opportunity to help himself, the police and the suspect are not on the same side. Rather, the interests of the police are at direct and inconceivable odds with the interests of the suspect. Wiegert and Fassbender's interrogation of Dassey is an excellent illustration of this conflict of interest. If Dassey had acted in his best interest and invoked one of his Miranda rights, Wiegert and Fassbender would have been far worse off. If Dassey had decided to remain silent or at least consult with a lawyer, most of whom in turn would have told him to remain silent, the government would have had a weaker case against Avery and no case whatsoever against Dassey. On the other hand, by getting Dassey to talk, Wiegert and Fassbender dramatically strengthened the case against Avery and even created an entirely new case by making a murderer out of Dassey as well. The point in this, the police wanted and often needs the suspect to talk. Without the suspect's statement, the government will have a weak case or no case. Yet it is the police who are supposed to warn the suspect about the dangers of talking. In theory, this is the conflict of interest. In practice, however, it poses no problem at all. The reason is that whether the Constitution conveys a right or a protection like the Miranda warning, the police, with the help of prosecutors and judges, simply develop a way to get around it. Unlike the popular television drama where the police read the suspect his Miranda rights clearly, loudly, and proudly, almost as if they are a government victory speech, the real life police don't want to do that and have developed several tactics to flat document, uh, dictate the Miranda's safeguards. And Wiegert and Fassbender used one of those tactics when they interviewed Dassey at Mishicot High School on February 27, 2006. As the next chapter explains, they simply and legally skipped Dassey's Miranda warning entirely, instead it went straight to the questioning. Wow. Linda was right. Oh my god. We had this discussion last live we went on. Linda was right. Chapter 7, Bypassing Miranda, page 35. We've got 2 more chapters to go. Not a lot of pages. We've got, what, 10 pages left. So we're doing good, guys. All right. Bypassing Miranda. When the police try to talk to a suspect, they do so because they want the suspect to well talk. The police therefore do not want to read the suspect a Miranda warning because if they do, the suspect might invoke those rights and refuse to talk. Fortunately for the police, the law requires them to read the Miranda warning only if both the following are true. First, the suspect is in police custody, and second, the police are questioning or interrogating the suspect. Thus, to bypass the Miranda entirely and to avoid reading the suspect his rights, the police simply need to structure the police-suspect interaction so that one of those two things is not true. Holy shit. For example, assume that a suspect is in custody and the police would like him to make a statement. Instead of reading his Miranda rights, hoping he waives those rights, and then asking questions, the police can simply get the suspect talking in other ways. If the police can get in statements without technically asking the suspect any questions, then no Miranda warnings are needed. This tactic is nicely illustrated in the case of McClellan versus State, which I discussed in the recent Law Review article. All parties agreed that the defendant was in custody at the time of his statement. The issue was whether he was being questioned. While sitting with the arrest defendant, detectives decided to engage him in general shop talk about what else? Worthless checks and forgeries. The very crimes with the defendant was being charged. During the course of this shop talk, the detective called the defendant an amateur and further questioned him about his alleged crimes, and including asked, "How did you do it?" The defendant, unaware of his Miranda rights, reportedly answered the defendant's questions about the alleged crimes, including telling him how he committed them. But when the defendant's lawyer later moved to suppress the defendant's statements because the police never read him his rights, the government was able to defeat the motion by arguing that detective shop talk was not the same thing as asking the defendant questions. And because the police only engaged in shop talk rather than direct questioning, the defendant was not entitled to a Miranda warning, and because the police did not violate Miranda, the prosecutor was allowed to use the defendant's statements against him at trial. This is why you should never talk to a cop, ever, about anything, ever. Even if they're your neighbor. Never talk to a police officer. They are not your friends. In reality, of course, the so-called shop talk was direct questioning. The words, "How did you do it?" constitute a question, no matter which way or how many ways you slice it. Yet by merely putting a different label on it, the police, prosecutor, and judge were able to accomplish their shared goal: get the defendant's statement into evidence at trial to get a conviction. It really is that easy in most cases, but that tactic probably would not have worked on Dassey, a shy, quiet, and withdrawn child who was not likely to take the bait freely partake in shop talk with Wiegert and Fassbender. Rather, as the footage in Making a Murder demonstrated, the interrogators had to drag the words out of him by alternating a variety of threats and promises, asking repeated and leading questions, touching him, and employing several other interrogation tactics. Therefore, because Wiegert and Fassbender would not be able to later claim they were merely engaged in shop talk, rather than asking direct questions, they had to employ a different tactic: question Dassey while he was technically not in custody. No custody, no Miranda. How did Wiegert and Fassbender accomplish this? Just like the interrogators in the McClellan, they resorted to a superficial form over substance trick. When took Dassey out of his classroom on February 27, 2006, they did not put him in the squad car and drove him to the police station for questioning. Instead, they took him to a room at Mishicot High School and questioned him there. Once they were alone with Dassey, they did two things. First, to avoid any future defense lawyer argument that Dassey was not free to leave and therefore was in custody and was entitled to the reading of the Miranda warning, they told Dassey, "You're not under arrest, you know that." And second, to ensure that Dassey would cooperate with them instead of clamming up or even walking out of the room, the interrogators immediately made it clear that I really appreciate if you would just kind of relax and open up with us. I want you to talk to us, talk what you're thinking about, feeling maybe. And from there, they were off to the races. This was low key, this was low risk strategy for Wiegert and Fassbender to employ. They knew it was safe to tell Dassey he was not in custody, as there was no way Dassey was going to defy two adult authority figures who had just removed him from the class for the purpose of talking to him. They knew there was virtually zero chance Dassey was going to stand up and walk out of the room in response to their direct questioning. Therefore, isolating him for an in-school interrogation was the functional equivalent of in custody interrogation, but without Dassey technically being in custody for purpose of Miranda. Given that Wiegert and Fassbender structured Dassey's interrogation as out-of-custody questioning, they were able to skip the Miranda warnings and launch straight into the heart of the matter. "I'm afraid you saw something. Did you see a hand, foot, something in that fire, or bones?" And they would not take no for an answer. "You're not being honest, totally honest with us. I find it quite difficult to believe that you wouldn't have seen something like a hand or a foot, a head, hair, something, okay? We know you saw something." And when Dassey finally took the bait and agreed to some of their statements, they rewarded him with prodding him for more. You're you're starting to get it now, okay? It'll be all right. Get it all out. It doesn't do any good to get half of it out." As discussed earlier, Wiegert and Fassbender had to interrogate Dassey several times before they could get it all out, and some of those interrogations did take place in the police station. In fact, later on February 27th, they questioned Dassey at the Two Rivers Police Department for the second leg of their four-part, two-day interrogation tour. During the location of that questioning, they were much more likely to be considered an in-custody interrogation. Therefore, Wiegert and Fassbender did read Dassey his Miranda rights. But as the next chapter explains, police can't bypass Miranda entirely and instead must read a suspect a standard Miranda warning. They have developed numerous techniques to include the suspect to waive rather than invoke those important rights. Hey, Carolyn. Well, I'm just gonna take a minute to be like, I feel kind of really disgusted and dirty reading that last one because essentially they tricked a child into confessing to giving information against his will. I mean, that's pretty much they manipulated and they purposely manipulated. Like we all knew that. We all knew that was what happened to Brendan. But I guess just to have it like spelled out, like this is how they bypassed reading his Miranda rights, letting him know that he had a right to his constitutional rights. Like they specifically did it in a way to where they tricked him. And we're supposed to believe that police are the good people. This is why I struggle with that. This is why I'm very anti-police. And I'm sorry to anybody who's police or fam, whatever. I'm not anti-human. So like I know each person is different and there are good police officers, but this is a good example as to why and told the system I'm very anti-police officer because this is sick. This is absolutely sick to do to a human being, much less a child. So to purposely trick a child into believing that he has no other option but to basically spew back the narrative that you want him to say throw him in prison for life. Like, this is disgusting. All right, one more chapter, folks. Disgusting criminal Ellie. Yes, absolutely disgusting. So we've got one more chapter, which is like 3 more pages, and then we're good for today on the reading. I told you these chapters are small. So chapter 8, page 39, overcoming Miranda. Before their in-custody interrogations, Wiegert and Fassbender read Dassey his Miranda rights, including his right to remain silent and his right to free of charge lawyer to advise him before and during questioning. Yet both times Dassey waived his rights and talked. But why, after hearing the Miranda warnings, including warning that anything he said be used against him, would Dassey agree to waive his rights and talk even once, let alone multiple times? First, Dassey is not alone in waiving his rights. Several large-scale studies show that approximately 80% of real-life criminal suspects waive their rights to talk to the police. And in 2012, Anthony Domenico, Lawrence T. White, and I published a study turned article discussing a sample of 29 police interrogations in Wisconsin in which state or 27 or 93% of the suspects waived their rights. Based on this example, Wisconsin interrogators are better than the national average at getting suspects to talk. Interesting, right? One reason for this high rate is the suspects typically do not understand the Miranda warning and the important rights they are giving up when they decide to answer their interrogators' questions. For example, the Wisconsin Miranda warning we tested, which was reproduced in chapter 6, was very similar to the warnings that Wiegert and Fassbender read to Dassey. Requires a 10th grade reading level in order to comprehend 75% of its meaning, yet most suspects, including Dassey, read at a much lower level. Given Dassey's limited reading abilities and low general intelligence, he likely understood very little about the substance and the importance of his Miranda rights. Second, Chapter 6 also explained that the police have a conflict of interest in the Miranda process. They are legally required to tell the suspect about the dangers of dating, but they don't want to convey that message too clearly, or the suspect might actually refuse to speak to them. Therefore, when reading Miranda, the police will minimize the importance, thus inducing the suspect to waive rather than invoke the underlying right. In our study of Wisconsin interrogations, nearly half the interrogators used minimalization tactics that range from saying the procedure is just something we have to do to present Miranda as mere formality, the appetizer before the main course, so to speak. Dassey's interrogators were no different. Before reading Dassey his Miranda warning at the Two Rivers Police Department, Wiegert said, "Before we ask any questions, Brendan, I have to read you your rights, and that's just what we have to do. Steps, okay?" So minimization combined with Dassey's inability to comprehend the substance of the warning, the probability high enough to induce him to waive his rights. But just in case it wasn't, Wiegert and Fassbender employed other waiver-induced strategies. Third, speed matters. It is commonly known that as speakers speak faster and faster, listeners comprehend less and less. And in our study of real-life Wisconsin interrogations, the police spoke significantly faster, 31% faster during the Miranda procedure than before after reading the Miranda warning. In fact, in 29 real-life interrogations we studied, the interrogators developed the Miranda warning at an average of 268 words per minute. This makes an already difficult to understand warning nearly impossible for most suspects to comprehend. And when a suspect doesn't grasp the substance and significance of his rights, he is more likely to waive them. But what about Wiegert and Fassbender? In addition to minimalizing the importance of the Miranda, they also read the warning very quickly, thus decreasing Dassey's comprehension and increasing the odds he would waive rather than in his rights. When delivering the Miranda warning before the fateful interrogation at the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, Wiegert spoke more than 270 words per minute, leaving Dassey with little hope of understanding even the importance, let alone the substance, of the language that Wiegert was rattling off. And we all have to remember that Brendan only comprehends like a certain amount of words per minute, sort of thing, and also a certain amount of sentences spoken to him, or not understands, but like processes at the time of speaking it. So if I was like, let's say, reading to him his Miranda rights, he would probably only process the first few sentences and then kind of just get lost in the rest of it. So yeah, he should have had somebody sitting in there with him, slowly reading the Miranda rights and explaining to him what those meant. And that should be required of all people in an interrogation, not just a child, but anybody. Fourth, timing is everything. Chapter 7 explained how Wiegert and Fassbender interrogated Dassey at length, without Miranda warnings, at Mishicot High School on February 27th. Later, Dassey likely viewed the Mirandized questioning at the two police department questions by the same interrogators on the same day regarding the same topic as mere continuation of the earlier questioning. In essence, although they did read Dassey his Miranda rights, they did so well in the long, multi-part interrogation. By the time the horse had already left the barn, the warnings were lost to what little meaning they may have otherwise had for Dassey. And with regarding to the interrogation at the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, the interrogator's timing of the Miranda reading was impeccable. Wiegert and Fassbender first told Dassey to come to the police station so they could continue their questioning that began less than 48 hours earlier. Then, after he agreed, they read him his Miranda rights, which concluded as follows: "Understanding those rights, do you want to talk with us?" Of course, the answer was yes, as Dassey had already agreed to do so, and in fact was in the back of a moving police vehicle en route to the sheriff's department when they read him his rights and asked the question. Given the interrogator's strategic timing, there was simply no chance that the highly complainant child would demand that they stop the police vehicle so he could invoke a set of rights he never understood in the first place. But assume for a moment that Dassey was able to read at a high enough level to understand the substance of the Miranda warning. Further, provided that Wiegert did not minimize the importance of Dassey's rights and additionally did not race through the warnings at the breakneck speed of more than 270 words per minute. Finally, pretend that Wiegert actually read Dassey his rights at the very beginning, rather somewhere in the middle, or for a part, 2-day interrogation. Even assuming away of all these problems, would Dassey, or even hypothetically intelligent and well-informed adult suspect, know what the rights he would be giving up if he agreed to speak? In other words, did the Miranda warning itself make any sense? On February 27th, before the interrogation at the Two Rivers Police Department, Wiegert awkwardly delivered a Miranda warning that read, in part, as follows: "You have the right to talk to a lawyer for advice before we ask you any questions and have them with you during questioning. You have this right to the advice and presence of a lawyer, even though you cannot afford to hire one. We have no way of getting you a lawyer, but will be appointed to you if you wish, and if when you go to court. This cop speak raises several questions. First, as the law requires, Wiegert tells Dassey that he has the right to consult with a lawyer before we ask you any questions and during questioning. But then, in classic cop fashion, he reverses the course. We have no way of getting you a lawyer. Is this even a proper Miranda warning, given that it's contradicted itself? Worse yet, it actually says the opposite of what law requires by telling the suspect he will not be provided with a lawyer before and during questioning. Alternatively, police have a way of getting the suspect a lawyer before and during questioning. Does the suspect really have that to begin with? After hearing this garbled mess of a Miranda warning, a reasonable suspect in Dassey's position may wonder, what exactly are my rights that the police are asking me to give up? Yet Uyghur then tells Dassey that a lawyer would not be provided until you go to court. Go to court for what? Up until this point, the interrogators have been lying to Dassey, telling him that if he would tell them what they wanted to hear, which he did, they would protect him from criminal prosecution. So does that mean Dassey would get a lawyer if he goes to court to testify in Stephen's case? Given all the police deception and the other court, could Dassey possibly be imagining at that point? Third, Uyghur's Miranda left an open, even bigger question. It clearly warned Dassey that anything you say can be used against you. But what about what Dassey does not say? In other words, if Dassey elects to remain silent, would his silence be used against him as evidence of his guilt? The answer is no. As general rule, post-Miranda silence is not admissible at trial. Nevertheless, many suspects think that if they remain silent, or worse yet, lawyer up, they will look guilty to a jury. Miranda warning does nothing to dispel the misconception, which is yet another reason the suspects are inclined to waive their rights to talk to the police. I'm just going to pause here. We hear that a lot, especially in this case, with certain suspects. If you're innocent, then you have nothing to worry about, right? If you're innocent, why don't you just talk? I hear that a lot with I won't say suspect names, but I do hear that a lot. And I just have to say, Brendan and Stephen were innocent and they talked, and look what happened to them. And they had nothing to hide, right? Or it's Stephen at least, right? I'm not saying Brendan doesn't have anything to hide, but you all know Stephen maintained his innocence from the time he was arrested to now. Brendan did give a false confession on March 1st, but then afterwards maintained his innocence. So I guess what my point is saying that Stephen was innocent. He maintained his innocence, and he had no reason to hide anything, yet he's still incarcerated for crime he didn't do. So that's why when people say, well, if you're innocent, why don't you just talk? Well, because they want to throw you in prison for life, especially if you're innocent. You don't want to do that. Always get a lawyer. That's all I have to say. And that whole, like, if you have nothing to hide, then, well, it has nothing to do with hiding anything. It's a misconception in society that if you lawyer up or if you don't want to talk to the police or whatever, then you must be guilty. When that's not the case. That's just your rights. In the Constitution, you have rights. And yeah, say the wrong thing and they easily get twisted. Watch Murder on Sunday Morning if you want to see what happens if you do ask for a lawyer. I'll have to look at that then. Is that on Netflix, Jasnaz? But I always kind of like get a little annoyed when people say that, especially in any case, but in this case, when they're like, if you have nothing to hide, then why don't you just go talk to blah, blah, blah. Always get a lawyer, first of all. Then talk to your lawyer. Then talk to the detectives, police, or whoever needs to talk to you. I don't care what you think. If you think I'm innocent or guilty, I'm a lawyer. So, there. Yeah, it's a big giant misconception in society that if you have a lawyer or if you refuse to talk to cops, then you must be guilty, and that's just not the case. YouTube, I think? Alright, I'll have to look that up after maybe tonight at work. Fourth and finally, even if Wiegert had read Dassey an intelligible Miranda warning, Dassey probably still would have waived rather than provoked his rights. The reason that Wiegert did not give him an actual choice in the matter, instead he presented the highly complicated child with only one option: waive the rights. More specifically, on February 27th, Wiegert read Dassey his Miranda rights from a form that concluded as follows: I understand what my rights are. I am willing to answer questions and make statements. I do not want a lawyer. I understand and know what I'm doing. Nowhere on the form was Dassey provided an alternate such as, I do not understand my rights, particularly because you first told me that I have the right to a lawyer before and during questioning, but then you told me that you have no way of getting me a lawyer. Similarity, nowhere on the form was Dassey given this option. I'm not willing to answer questions or make a statement, and of course nowhere on the form was Dassey allowed to choose this alternative. I don't understand or know what I'm doing because I'm a child being railroaded by two cops who told me they were acting as my father figure and not as a government agent. I'm laughing because the sarcasm in this is just amazing. I appreciate the way he wrote this book. Oh man. How to read from Miranda warning to give suspects some actual choices is the subject of matter chapter 32. Dassey therefore reluctantly accepted one option with which he was presented: to answer the questions and make statements. Wiegert, do you agree with that? Brendan, yeah. Do you have to speak up a little bit? Yeah. Yes? Yes. The hard part is now behind Wiegert and Fassbender. However, there's still one more Miranda-related issue for them to worry about. The warning they had read to Dassey, like the one discussed in Chapter 6, informed him of the following right. You have the right to stop answering questions at any time until you talk to a lawyer. Arguably, this was another illusory right, given that seconds earlier, Wiegert told him, we have no way of getting you a lawyer. Nevertheless, it was the theological possible, though highly unlikely, that Dassey might remember his right to stop answering questions at any time and bring the interrogation to a grinding halt. Therefore, as the next chapter explains, Wiegert and Fassbender pulled one more Miranda-related ploy out of their sizable book of tricks. And that's where we're going to end it today. I hope all that was somewhat interesting. Hey, Darkside. Yeah, I learned something a little bit new about the Miranda warning, and I'm excited to read on more. Anybody have any questions, anything before we conclude today's reading? Bueller? Well, I wait for y'all. I do want to mention that we're doing this thing with the postcards. Brendan's birthday is coming up, and Wiegert is sheriff. And now that we're talking about slimy motherfuckers, Wiegert is sheriff in Calumet County, and we are doing this thing where, for Brendan's birthday, we're going to be sending Wiegert and Governor Evers postcards to remind him that we will never forget what he did to Brendan. So here's for if you're in the UK or surrounding areas, I imagine, you email UK postcards for Brendan at gmail.com, and for America and other places, anywhere else in the world, email me at brendantalks89@gmail.com with your address, and we'll send you some postcards. They are free. And then you mail them off to Wiegert and say, hey, Wiegert, it's Brendan's birthday coming up. Remember that dude that's life you stole away? You can bring up these Miranda rights too. Remember how you tricked a child into confessing to a murder he didn't commit? Yeah, that guy, Brendan Dassey. Yeah. Enjoy your retirement, Uyghur. We will not forget your role in this. I will never forget Uyghur and Fassbender's role in this. If Fassbender was still employed somewhere, I would be mailing him postcards too. I don't think he's employed anywhere. I think he is retired, and it is inappropriate to find somebody's home address, so I would never do that. But I just want, if by any chance Fassbender or even Wiegert's listening to this, just know that we will never forget your role and what you did to Brendan Dassey and his life that you took. And if I could send you, Fassbender, a postcard, I would send you a postcard too, but I can't. So it makes me so upset and angry of what they did, Brendan. And essentially Brendan was like innocent 100%, and you tricked a child. You manipulated and tricked a child, and I cannot believe, like Carolyn said, I don't understand how you sleep at night either. I don't understand how you have children and you're okay with what you did to Brendan. You have grandchildren now, probably. Like, I can't. Karma's a bitch. That's all I gotta say. So hopefully, what happened to Brendan will never happen again to your family. But, karma is a bitch. Yeah, it makes me very upset. I wish I could actually be a little bit more open with how I'm feeling, but I don't want to. They're just awful, awful, horrible people. They are awful, awful people. Awful people for what they did. But yeah, so email me. I have Roxana, Carrie, a whole bunch of people I'm getting postcards set up for. I'm just waiting on stamps. They should be here any day now. Heck, I might just go to the post office and mail them off anyway without the stamps. I mean, I can do that. But you will be getting, anybody else that wants more postcards, let me know. In the UK, let Linda know through that email. We have this Wednesday, Brendan's having a gyro sandwich. So if you want to have a sandwich, a gyro sandwich in spirit with Brendan, join in on the event page, take a picture of it, post it there, and we will print those off and send them off to Brendan Thursday morning. He really enjoys when people join in with him like that. And then I do have a thing coming up, or I have a appreciation breakfast Wednesday morning for work. So I don't know when I will be getting off from that. I couldn't imagine it lasting more than an hour, but just in case, I set the live a little bit later than what I would normally go live. But in case I have to adjust it, I'll let you guys know. And yeah. I think that's all I have for you guys. Also, Wednesday is coming up. It's also Positively Brendan. Free for All Friday still going on, so participate in that. Brendan loves all that you guys do for him as far as that stuff goes. or in general, send Brendan a letter. And yeah, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you all for participating in this little live here. And I'll be seeing you Wednesday. Tuesday also we'll be doing Discord. So if you're on Discord, I'll see you there.
You were appointed, was it on March 7th or March 8th?
March 7th.
March 7th, okay. Did you talk to Brendan on that day on March 7th?
I don't believe I did.
Okay. However, you did talk to the press, is that right?
Yeah, shortly after the appointment, the calls started rolling into the office.
Sure. I want to draw your attention to a news report from Channel 26 that says we have a 16-year-old who, while morally and legally responsible, was heavily influenced by someone that can only be described as something close to evil incarnate. Right?
That's what it says I said, but that wasn't me.
Okay. Is there anything about this statement that bothers you?
To say that we have a 16-year-old who's morally and legally responsible, that would in effect admit guilt, and that is something you should definitely not say.
Just for the record, Your Honor, Mr. Kaczynski testified that he did not make those comments, and this exhibit is being introduced as impeachment evidence to demonstrate that, in fact, Mr. Kaczynski made those comments.
The court will receive it.
Attorney Len Kaczynski immediately lashed out at Stephen Avery.
We have a 16-year-old who, while morally and legally responsible, was heavily influenced by someone that can only be described as something close to evil incarnate.
And the next day, you make the statement that if the confession is valid and admissible as evidence, it would almost certainly result in a conviction. Correct. Okay. You still have reviewed Brendan's statement, right?
No, that's correct.
First statement?
Correct.
All right. March 10th